Hi everyone, welcome to Riffing with G. I am G. Today our very special guest star is Mr. Brenton Reggie Page. I'm going to find out how you got that name this time. I've never found out that. Brenton came out of Townsville with prog rock legends Vaya and played in the Royal Artillery as well as the Given Things, and is now currently holding down the four strings with Osaka Punch out of Brisbane. Hey B, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, good. Welcome along to this new venture.
Nah, man, I'm excited. I'm keen to do it. 'Cause I was
Cool.
just waiting for something like this to happen.
Well, it's good to get your perspective. One thing I think that well, where did Reggie come from for a start? Before I forget.
Reggie Tugnuts. That came
Uh,
from yeah, in Osaka Punch, we did a film clip called Gig Fit, and just a part
That's
of
right.
that little skit, there was a fitness guy who needed to, train our guitarist to get gig fit again, and his name happened to be Reggie Tugnuts.
And you
So
played
that
Reggie
was
Tugnuts, yeah,
I
right.
played that character, and that kind of just
Just stuck.
Reggie kind of stuck like
Very
nuts
cool.
to your legs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, is
Hey,
this a PG show? Let's lay down some. What
no,
are we?
I've decided to tick the E button on Apple Podcasts, so it will be explicit. We can use our swears if we want to.
Is that E for erotic or?
E for
Oh, it's okay.
everything's
Good.
erotic with you,
We can get
Brenton.
sexy as possible. All right. All right.
Hey, we were talking before we just started chatting here. Something came up that I wanted to touch on. Now, you've something I think is really unique about you compared to a lot of people that I play with, is that you've never played cover gigs. It's never been a route that you've gone down. And most original musos will kind of do a bunch of different things. How did that decision come about? And is it a good decision?
Well, I think because when I really, really seriously started to follow my music dream, let's say, I moved from Townsville to Brisbane in an originals band. So I think I just put all of my focus on that. And I had come from Townsville with a nursing degree. So I started nursing. So I think it was just, I kind of split it into my work, making the money through nursing, and then every other ounce of music I put into just the original side of things. Now, was that a good decision? Probably not. I mean, I think you can. I mean, I think yes and no. Actually, I'll say that again. Yes and no, because doing the nursing thing, I'd never take that back because that was a steady job that enabled me to do a lot of things with music. Because you need a lot of finances, unfortunately, to follow that, which you can get from covers as well. But I think the thing that I probably missed on covers is just playing different songs and just bettering yourself as a whatever instrument you're playing. I think there's no denying that playing covers, particularly if you do it the right way, you're going to improve your skills. So yeah, like part of me, regrets that. I mean, it's never too late. And I think it would just be a fun time to have as well, if you're playing with your friends and whatnot. But yeah, I think I probably missed out a bit there. But at the same time, I don't know if I would change it if I went back.
So I always admire that decision because I think that sometimes it's great having your job be your passion or your hobby, but it also means that sometimes your hobby can suffer or your passion can suffer because you spend your time doing it at work. I mean, I don't like to listen to music on the way home from gigs because I've spent or I get burnt out on
Totally.
new music. It's like podcasts all the way because it's just way too much after a weekend of gigs. And I found it really hard to kind of separate the two sometimes. And so I was lucky enough during COVID to do a lot of writing and a lot of finishing of original music because I
Sure.
didn't have that extra headfuck of going out and playing Brown Eyed Girl every weekend.
Yeah. And I think subconsciously, I think I had that in my head as well, because I think you need to be aware of yourself and and like you've just said, I think I can relate to that because I know that if I spent, say, 2 hours learning 50 covers, then that hour that I should have done to do my stuff, I'd be like, no, I'm going to go play PlayStation or
Yeah.
go exercise. Like I've wasted my quota today. And that's some people probably just think, well, you just don't love music enough. And that may be the case. So you just got to balance that. So for me, I was like, I just want to make it, completely focus on that. And yeah, so I can definitely relate to that.
It's a bandwidth issue, you've only got a certain amount of bandwidth to use every day,
Man, that's it. That's it. That's a good pun too, actually.
Oh yes, bandwidth, as opposed to band girth, which is another thing altogether.
Yes.
Was there much of a scene in Townsville coming from the country? Did you do music at school?
No, I grew up very much in the sporting side. So my music kind of started, I guess, late. I was 15 when I got my first bass guitar. So I was grade 10 when I first started playing bass. And then from grade 10 to grade 12, by the end of grade 12, I was sold. I kind of started deviating from my basketball kind of days and just went straight to music. As for a scene, you know what? It wasn't so bad because it wasn't like Brisbane where there was the valley and lots of places to play, for example. However, I found Townsville just became a place where bands would hit. So you would know the Butterfly Effect, visited there a bunch of times. I remember seeing you guys play at the university and back in those days, so DLC were coming through. Japunga had hit had come through a bunch. Friends of Rom, and just as I left Brisbane, the Middle East kind of had their whatever.
Oh, that's right.
They're out of Townsville.
Yeah, they're out of Townsville. Yeah.
I would never say that it's a music hotspot or anything like that, but it's also, once you've gone north of Brisbane, Townsville, Kansas, no offense to the other places, but that's, unless you're playing country music, Townsville, Kansas, probably your destination, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we would never get very big crowds in Rocky. A couple of times we did or whatever in the early days. But Kansas, too much of a tourist town. Most people are a lot of backpackers through there. So Townsville's got a lot more of a stable population. Was there did you say you didn't do, did you do music subjects at school? Did you have a music teacher and stuff?
No, because I'd kind of already, I had already chosen pretty much my subjects for senior years before I kind of got it into music.
Yeah.
So the music thing for me didn't become I'm actually going to do this until I really left high school. I had a bass teacher, which I started when I first got my bass guitar. But no, I didn't do it at school, which, in hindsight, I really wish I had have started earlier and gotten that in. But, I just didn't work out that way. So
a lot of bass players start on guitar first, but it sounded like you went straight to bass. Was there a reason for that?
It's funny. So I had this exact conversation the other day with someone. I was always told growing up that, because I always wanted to play bass guitar, but I was always told, oh no, you got to learn guitar first. That was, I don't know if that's just a thing that people say or whatever, but like you said, a lot of people do guitar first and then go to bass, I guess. For me, pretty much two things why I chose bass. One, just the 3 videos, VHSs that I had on repeat constantly at home growing up was Pantera, Vulgar Display Power, and I had Rage Against the Machine and Cunning Stunts by Metallica. And in all 3, I was just drawn to the bass parts, particularly in Cunning Stunts. Jason Newsted does a bass solo in it. And I've always just been that just sounds so cool. So I always liked the bass. And then the second thing, my friend that I very first started a band in, he played guitar. So my initial thing was, well, if I learn bass, dang. So so I just went straight to bass.
I think we all realize early on that there's often a greater potential for more work if you're a bass player.
Dude, totally. Yeah. Everyone wants to be a lead guitarist or a singer or even a drummer, man. Generally it seems like bass is kind of
the last choice.
Almost the last choice. Yeah, but for me, I was that's exactly where it's at.
It's funny. I know we've had this sort of conversation before, I think, but there's something I think that Victor Wooten once said is that there's something about the personality of a bass player. There's somewhat of a conciliatory nature, someone who's happy to stand, because we stand in the middle of all of the different instruments, and we kind of take a little part of all of them, and a good bass player obviously follows the bass drum and the drummer, but of course that only supplies the rhythm side of things, and then you've got the guitarist, which is supplying the harmony and the melody, or at least the harmony anyway, and then you've got the vocal supplying the melody, and all of those things come together, and you are sort of the nexus of all of those things. It's you kind of, the harmony, but somebody said that the chord doesn't change until I decide that the chord changes. You can change chord, but if I'm still on this thing, it just becomes a slash chord or something. But the chord stays the same until I choose to change it. So, but I think that I found that to be true. I think there's a certain kind of personality of bass players that are happy to kind of go, come on guys, let's all get along, because that's what we do musically.
Just bringing everybody together, kind of deal.
It's
no,
so
man, I agree. I agree, but I love it.
So you didn't, but then through that process, then you came to, you didn't do any sort of proper, well, were you doing theory as part of your bass lessons, or was it just kind of just more about learning songs and learning a bit of technique and stuff?
It was just learning technique, songs, and tabs. No theoretical music, no theoretical training. Because to this day.
Okay. What were you going to say?
I think that was mainly because my bass teacher at the time, who was a great bass player, but he didn't have any theory knowledge either. So he just kind of taught me what he knew. But in Townsville, he was like quite a renowned bass player, but he just had a really great ear, and he had really great technique. So
what was his name?
He just kind of showed Tave Bragg.
Cave Bragg.
And he played in a Tave, Tave, Bragg. So I don't know if you remember Mark Bragg. He used to Mark Bragg used to coach the Suns, the Townsville Suns, NBL team back in the day.
Yeah.
That's his brother. Tave. And, Tave used to play in a Townsville band called Link from back in the day.
We played with them. I'm sure we played with them. I think they supported us in Port Douglas one night on some night of debauchery. They were like an open. Could have very well. His name seems very familiar.
Yeah, Tay is a very unique name. So but
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so that I think that's why I think I didn't particularly go down that theory road, and not by choice as such. I was just like, just point the direction and I'll go that way, because I knew nothing about music. So I was just like, let's do it.
Well, I think that's also interesting. Vaya was, and Osaka as well, you guys well known for odd time signatures and that sort of stuff. How do you approach that? Is it just rote learning, or is that, do you have any techniques that you use to get through?
Not really. Like, I think just with, for me, I can only obviously comment about myself, but I won't actually. I'll comment about some of the other guys. Some of the other guys in Osaka do have strong theory. Like, most of them do have strong theory. Like, they've either gone to Jazzworks or what's it called, JMC or whatever. So but for me, it's just feel for me, and just playing, like, and over the years of like listening to different bands, and I'm like, I may not understand like the theoretical term for what someone's doing, but I'm like, I like how Dream Theater does that kind of feel. And I'm like, I want to do something like I don't want to rip it off, but I want to do something in that vein. So then I'll just kind of write something that feels that way.
Okay.
And then
a lot of repetition though to get that sort of stuff down. Do you find?
Particularly if I'm learning, like if Crispy or if Jack's written like a wacky time signature, learning it is a bit of just like, I don't count it out. Like, so Blair, our new drummer and stuff like that, he's very, very theory driven. So he'll count it out, or he'll even just write it out, and he'll be like, oh, got it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas mine, it's just more like, I'll just kind of feel it out. So where the hits are, I'll go off. I'll use the drum as like a cue, and like, oh yeah, I know it's like, or whatever. And so, and then it's just, it's just kind of in there. So it's definitely not orthodox really, but it works. It's got me this far. But
I think sometimes, like, I'll hear my partner singing along. She's not really that musical at all, and I'll hear her singing along to something in an odd time, and she actually has better understanding of the flow of the track
right.
than what I do, because I think sometimes I can't disconnect the
From
higher learning part of the music, trying to figure out exactly what the part is, and go like, is that 7 or 5? Okay, that's 7. Where does and sometimes like the vocals, Maynard does this all a lot of the time as well. There's a point where there's a vocal cue or whatever, and it's coming out of a fairly ambiguous time stretch, and you're like, where does that one hit, or where does that vocal come in? And I have to be like, I have to almost do that thing where I'm going to have to write it out, and I'm to learn what the count is, or learn what the fretting is, and then once I do that, then I can kind of hope that I know where the vocal comes in, I guess. But a lot of the time, I can't. I still won't know.
It's just kind of hard to wrap your head around. Yeah, and that's same for me. Like because I can't, and I've never known because I think some people might think, but if I've got that, like what you just said, it might mess with some things. But obviously having that theory is never going to be a weakness. It's never a weakness. Like I wish I really probably should still go down that road. It's obviously never too late, but I've just always just had to listen to something, and that's what it is. Like you're saying, repetition. Like if we record it and I need to learn it, if I've got it and I know what the notes are, I will get it. No matter what, I will get it. It might take me a day, it might take me a week, I will get it. Okay. So it's just like, okay, I've just got to keep going until I get it, and that's all I've known. So that I always get there in the end.
Cool.
But I mean, it's just the way it's kind of been.
Do you know scale shapes and stuff? And do you know note names and things, or are you like just numbers?
No. Like, so I know the notes. I mean, and that's, I find at the moment anyway, in Osaka, that doesn't help me so much, because most of the time Crispy and I are playing in different tunings. Because he tunes to sit like the way, because they've, before I joined the band, the bass player before me, he used to travel around with 3 bass guitars. So he had a fretless 4-string, a normal 4-string, and a 5-string. And they had so many different tunings. And I just remember when I tried out for the band, I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not traveling with 3 bass guitars. Like, that ain't happening. We're not Led Zeppelin. So the only way I could make it work was switch to a 5-string. So I played 5-string, and I would just have to kind of, tune a few strings to change to songs. Like, so Crispy might have a few songs in C tuning. So then I kind of just tune like my A string to C, and then the rest are in standard. So then I've got to move around. So if he's on the 3rd position on the fretboard, that doesn't mean that's where it is. So so because I found that pretty early, I was like, man, is that a G? And because he's playing it in the G spot, like, which is hilarious. But and then he's like, no, it's this. I'm like, what? And then I kind of realized, I'm like, oh. And I definitely don't have enough knowledge to go, oh, he's in C tuning, and then go, that's what it is. You know what I mean?
I find that hard. Still to do that correctly. But I often don't know what we were always pretty much both in drop C or standard tuning, or the same tuning. But with all these demos, it's the same thing. We're completely, if part of the riff seems like it fits better on an open string, then it goes on an open string, and then I have to figure out. But we're changing keys to best suit the vocals. So we're kind of we're working backwards and going, okay, where does it sit with Clint's voice the best? And so therefore that necessitates and so I kind of have to sit back and wait and see where Kurt keeps taking his guitar down and down and down, and to the point where the last single was in drop G sharp. And I have to go, that's not workable for me. And the same issue, like I used to travel around with basically 4 basses, and that was 2 basses that I used and then 2 spares, and and I don't, and now with, he's talking about maybe doing less. If I followed him where he was going, and he's got this problem, whereas now it's like, well, how many guitars are we going to take on the road if we're going to have all of these odd tunings? So it's just,
and that's the thing, man. I think, like, there is a creative side of doing alternate tuning and all that kind of stuff, but then there's a practical side to touring, and that's and I kind of made that I made that decision pretty early when I joined Osaka that like for me, just the most easy way to tour is kind of going to dictate some of the stuff, you know, because like the reality, you know what it's like touring, particularly in Australia, like we just get on with limited stuff, let alone, oh, I've got 3 other bases to come. Like, no, you do not. So, but so, I mean, it's not an issue anymore. I mean, because Crispy writes predominantly in C tuning. So, and then I write predominantly in standard tuning. So, and we both kind of dislike each other's tuning, because when he writes in C, like if I'm in standard, him pedaling off the open note is me pedaling off the first fret, which a lot of his riffs go like he's pedaling off open. So it's easy. But if you're trying to hold down the first fret, I'm like, wow, that riff, I can't do that. Or it's just going to break my hand. So I have to tune it to C, and then the rest is in stand. I'm like, this is a weird, I don't even know what that is, you know, like drop C or something. But that was when I first joined the Butterfly Effect, that was kind of the decision about that I had to try and figure out, like, okay, what are we doing with the bass? And I did think about trying to approach it in standard tuning, because I think I do gigs with sometimes on guitar with fill-in bass players who have had like the proper technique training, and they've got much better knowledge, and they wouldn't ever do things like change tuning. They're just like, well, what are the notes? I'll play it the way it's got to be. Do you need to move it down? Let's move it down. But, you know, like they would just work within that framework of, and I thought maybe I'll try and make it so that I could just work out the songs just on a standard 5-string bass. But so much of that stuff was written with open strings in mind that it was just. And I think, well, from how I kind of approached it too was with what we were doing, and it's probably similar with the Butterfly Effect. Like whatever the guitarist's lowest note was, I wanted to be able to play, like go low as well, because in that heavy style. Because sure, I mean, you can play a high C, but if it's a chunkin' riff, the high C is just not going to do what you want it to do. So that kind of was like, okay, I have to at least match that. And then the rest of it, sure, you can kind of do octaves or whatever to what the guitar's playing. But for me, just as long as if we're ripping this heavy riff here, then the bass needs to be holding that foundation. That's totally my opinion. So.
And that's something that there was that the first proper song off Begins Here, Perception Twin, was like that. The actual guitar riff is in the 12th position or 10th position. It was like 12 and 10 and 13 is the riff. And I remember when I was working that out, that trying to get that, so it turned out that the note that was on the D flat that's in hang on. The B flat that was the 10th fret on the guitar, I wanted that to be the lowest note on the bass. So that necessitated a drop tuning, so that I'm actually like in drop B flat, but it's only one string. And again, the shapes get all wonky because you're like, well, that's not actually an octave anymore. That's now.
Dude, that's it. So I'm the same, because that's the same with me with all the stuff Crispy writes. It's my lowest string is a C, but then everything else is E, A, D, G. So all but you kind of like, now I know with those songs, like if like with writing to it, any octaves, like it's a further stretch kind of thing. I'm like, that's right. Crap. But
what are you going to do? You're going to take the whole bass down a whole tone. So the lowest string is A, but then you've still got the problem that you can't use the open strings. So you're like, oh, and so am I going to be like A? I'm going to have the bass tuned A, C, A, D, G somehow. And I'd be like, I'm sure that's a kind of fun Jim Martin kind of gig. But
and that's the kind of the moment I had of like, okay, how am I going to? Because that's a thing too. Like live, you can't be tuning like that with one guitar. You know what I mean? And where we're at, we don't tour with like a bass tech or anything. So it's me doing it all. So either you're going to tour with 2 basses and swap it over, or the tuning thing. So the one string tuning is very doable.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was just more of like, okay, Crispy, show me that riff and I will play it. But if you see what I'm playing, it just looks completely different to what he's playing, kind of thing. But just as long as it sounds the same.
Do you ever bring ideas to the band, or have you done in other bands that you've been in before?
Yeah. So I ride in Osaka. I used to ride in Vaya as well. Yeah, definitely Osaka Punch. So, because we're recording our third record at the moment. So, I mean, the way we've always written in that band is very rarely will someone bring a full song to the table. Sometimes we do, or a skeleton of a full song at most, kind of thing.
Is that played live, or do they bring it with how's everyone's relationship with technology?
I am by far the shittest with that, and I need to remedy that, and that's on me. Crispy is a wizard because he actually has his own studio.
Yep.
So he's great. Jack's great at it, and Blair, the new drummer, has his own setup at home. They can all just record straight to Pro Tools. Yep. And it's no excuse. I just hate that side of it. So I've never delved it, but I know now that I'm letting the band down, not letting him down because we can still do it because we're lucky that we have a studio, so I can go in and do it. But I know that I should just learn how to do it, at least a basic, recording.
Just to be able to track it makes things easy.
100%. And easier, and just out of just being a good band member, I should do that. So I've actually started looking, okay, I need to do this, you know what I mean? And I'm sure once I get into it, I'm like, oh, it wasn't even that hard. It's just, it's quite simple. But so
a few phone calls to to Crispy going, I've got the bass plugged in, I've got the record track armed, but there's no sound coming in. What's wrong? He's like, have you checked this, and this? Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay, thanks, mate. 5 minutes later.
That's exactly. Have you turned it off and on again? Yeah. Well, yeah, that's it. So that's all it'll take. But so pretty much, to answer that question, so generally Jack and Crispy and Blair now actually, they'll demo something or demo a part, and and so, or if I've got something, I'll bring it to jams.
Yeah,
so that's what I kind of do. And then we'll just jam the riff or whatever, because what we were doing for a time is one night we went to the studio, to Crispy studio, and then the other night we had live jams. Yep. So we'd go into the studio one night, and if I'm like, I've got an idea, then we would track my idea, or track someone's idea and work on it. And then
that's it, hunting around.
And which is just across the hall. So it just works really well because you can kind of go, all right, let's get the idea down. Yeah. And then you got a couple of days to mull over it, and then we jam it on the Wednesday. Yeah. And then, because some things we find in the live jam, you kind of come up with things a bit easier, or drums are just a lot easier to fix on the fly because you're not, programming it. So, so it's a bit different. We kind of all have different kind of approaches to it, but to answer your original question, yes, I'd write in Osaka as well.
Is there a kit permanently set up in there, in the recording room? There is. Yeah. See.
In the recording room, there's not.
Oh, okay.
So that's that would be the definite ultimate. And that's why we find sometimes doing the live jams easier, because with drums you can kind of just go try this, and then within 30 seconds you can try it. You know what I mean? But so. It's a good setup, so we're pretty fortunate for that.
Do you? I always like to see how people handle. How do you handle other people's stinky ideas, and how do you deal with? How do they deal with the ideas that you bring that they don't like?
Don't make the cut. Well, man, I think kind of is why Osaka has had a kind of long lifespan, really. Because I think all of us none of us are really precious about our parts. And I think we all go in. I mean, every time you bring something, once it makes it to, I mean, I'm sure you can relate, before bringing it to the band, you've probably had a bunch of things that there's those certain levels, and there's a level where, okay, this is band work, it's worthy to take to the band. Yeah. So, I mean, once you get to that level, you're like, okay, I think we can show, I can show the guys. I've always still got that, but they may not like it or whatever. So just don't fully invest in it. Yep. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I think it's just human nature that if you've done something and you think it's got some chop, and then everyone else in the room says, nah, part of you's like, fuckers. But yeah, and I think it's a totally fair response to have. But I think yours, like, then you have to go, okay, and yeah, you just got to swallow your pride, be like. And I've learned to trust that, and maybe because I came into the band and I was never an original member, that I trust those guys as well. As much as I think they would, I like to think they trust me. So I trust their skills. I trust their taste as well. So if Jack ever, for example, isn't buzzed on something, he will tell you why. But it's always in just like an amicable way. But you're like, when he explains it, you're like, yeah, fair enough. And then it might just eventually get to a point where it's opinion versus opinion. Yeah. And we're lucky that we've got the relationship where we're like, let's just try it though. You know, even if I hate the shit out of it, let's try it. Because with drums and guitar and vocals, maybe I'll be like, oh, yeah, that's actually pretty fucking cool.
Totally.
Or vice versa. The other person will be like, yeah, you're right. That kind of does suck. But
I was talking to James from Bare Bones, and he was saying that he had this one riff, and he just had this picture in his head about how it was going to go live. And he brought it into the jams, and everyone just went, oh, it's just too stock. It's too basic. I don't want it. And he persevered. He went, no, this is, I can see this. And they worked it through, and it's like a deeper cut on one of the earlier albums. But every time they play it live, the crowd just goes sick. And I said, there must be that sort of temptation to like turn around to the guys and go,
and you know
my
what?
riff.
Yeah, and on the inside, he has every right to have that. Because I can kind of relate to that, because I think personally, like when I think people write in different ways, but I find a lot of the time I write with live in mind, kind of thing. So a lot of the riffs that I write, I'm thinking how I would react if I was in the crowd seeing it, or being up on stage, knowing other songs we play and how people react. I'm like, I think that would get that kind of feel, or like purely to write a song based around a show. Like I want to write a song that has like is a rad intro for a cool first song. You know what I mean? So I can see why he's probably just, maybe it is like a super basic riff, but it's probably just head snapping. Yeah. And in the right context live, people are like, give me that shit. I don't give a shit about you. I just want to like, you know, just nail that feel. So I'm glad he stuck to his guns. That's good.
And the old stink face chicken neck.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. Stank face. Yeah. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
So what's going on with Osaka? What was going on before COVID and stuff, and what are the plans for the future if we get back to normalcy?
I mean, every band's going to have their own story, and it's probably all going to be quite a sad story because we all had to stop. But so I'll just tell ours, and I'm not saying we're any better or worse off than any band, but pretty much we were really fortunate. Obviously, when we got the Butterfly Effect tour, because it was funny, man. Like just prior to that tour, we had a conversation about, I mean, the stuff that we write isn't particularly radio friendly, and we've kind of had feedback from radio, big radio places just saying, yeah, you guys are great, but you don't fit our mold, so we're not going to play you, which is a hard pill to swallow because you're like, okay, we don't have to go down that road. But so that led to us having a conversation about, I just said, I honestly think our best approach is to get on some good tours, because we're going to have to do this the old fashioned way and just keep playing and win people over that way. And not long after, you guys offered that tour, and I was like, yes, like that's exactly what we need. So we had the Butterfly Effect tour, which then backed onto the Mammal tour, which then backed onto the Cog tour, and then which backed onto Living Colour stuff. So for me, I was like, we can't ask for any more. Like if we don't make this work from here, then that's on us, or that's just, it's not meant to be. You know what I mean? Like that is literally what you asked for. The universe provided it. There you go, have a crack. So, and it kind of, the timing is good because we should have released our third record probably just before the Mammal tour. But then we couldn't say no to Butterfly Effect, couldn't say no to Mammal, couldn't say no to Cog. So I just pushed it all back. But in hindsight, it was like, well, this is actually great because the momentum's rolling, and then our next headline tour will be the third album. Like, let's drop the record and do our tour. So it was like the ducks were lined up, dude. They really were. And, obviously COVID did its thing, and that's just the way it is. But so we just kind of, and at the same time though, like COVID probably hit at a good time for us in the sense that we needed to finish the record so we could still be productive while not saying no to shows. And in that time, we also had a member change, which was a big deal for us. And we were all worried about that whole process and how long it was going to take. And I'm just glad that we weren't, shows weren't happening because we didn't have to say no to anything. So that change has already happened now. So when shows do come back, we'll hit the ground running. So we are continuing on with this third record. We have 4 more songs to record. Like they're pretty much written. The last part of them will probably just be done with Caleb James. He's recording, producing it. He generally likes to have a bit of a listen and a little bit of a play around. So we've kind of gotten our kind of thing now is we write to about 95% because we know there is going to be a little bit of change and we leave a little bit of room for change. I think once you've accepted there's going to be change, it's easier because if you're like, that's it, but you're like, well, you've got this guy as your producer, so you got to either fucking listen to him or don't get him to do that, he or she, whatever. But so we're pretty much there, man. It's just a matter now of just going into the studio and recording the tracks, dude. But December's a pretty tricky time just with everyone's timetables. But the plan, if it all goes to plan, new record will be done early next year. Then I don't know what happens from there, because then you kind of go probably like where you guys at. Do you release it digitally and then wait, or do you drip feed a little bit in hope that things come back, or do you just hold off altogether? I don't know what the answer is to that. But
are you managed or are you sort of self-managed at the moment?
50-50. So Tiana from the Soundcheck, she does a lot of that, and as a band we kind of do it together. We've always done it self-managed, and I do a little bit of that kind of stuff, but it just got to a point where it's just nice to have someone kind of take care of the stuff that's just very time consuming, and
you just need someone
someone that's just smarter than you.
Importantly, but that future planning, I mean, it's just so difficult for rock bands. I mean, it's fairly sort of common knowledge that rock is not what it once were. So it's kind of to know exactly how to go about it, because it seems like when we came up, there was a period of time around Begins Here that we were on the road. We were on the road pretty much 9 months straight, right? And we just finished one lap and we'd go again.
And you just start again.
And I'd say to people,
where is that? What, like, because I remember those days when you guys were doing that, and I was just, there's no way. I mean, I'm not saying we're as popular as you guys, but there's no way we could fucking do that, man. We just couldn't do that.
We'd be in Townsville 3 times a year,
Yeah.
And it was like, but I say that some people now, and they go, how would you possibly supported that? How could there have been possibly the punters? Wouldn't they have gotten sick of it? And I was like, it never seemed to. It just was, we'd go around and then we'd go back around again, and the shows would be bigger, and we'd go to a bigger venue or more places, or we'd do more regional shows, and it would just get bigger and bigger. And it seems like, I mean, I wonder whether it's people's attention spans have gotten shorter, but then again, they can deal with like an hour podcast, no worries. I love listening to long form 2-hour, 3-hour podcasts. So like, I mean,
me too.
But why can't bands do that anymore? Because that was the way, like I would have said that was the perfect formula that you guys were on. Get supports, then also follow that supports up with your own shows, which you were doing, selling out the zoo and that sort of stuff, and then so it's like, okay, cool, you're doing everything right, but then could you go around again? Could you go around again? Could you go around again? And the answer is not,
No,
like,
dude, that's it. And I don't know if it's people are sport with choice, or like technology has. See, I don't know what the answer is. Because if I did, I'd probably have a solution potentially. But because I just remember, and it's not healthy thinking this way, but like we've always spoken about, like we feel like we're a few years late for us. Like I feel like, and that might not be true, but just when you guys came through and did it the way you guys did it, like we're all about that. We're all about the touring, the live show. And I just feel like maybe in that time, if we had struck then, maybe things would be a bit different, but that's neither here nor there. But I just don't know whatever happened to that, just on a, not even on a, like a success for us level, but just on a more like, why
Industry.
can't bands tour? Yeah, like why can't bands do that no more? Or places just, are people not wanting music anymore, or just people's tastes have changed? Or I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know.
Like when I think about the music that I write, it's not contemporary sounding at all. I don't have any trap hats or anything on anything. But I make the music that I want to hear. And I certainly know that I'm not a unique snowflake. I know there's a lot of people out there that have the exact same taste in music as me. And I mean, is it just that where it's just a demographic thing? So I appeal to people who are 35 plus, or, you know, and most of those people have families and jobs and kids, you know, and so there's just, it's a once a year thing. You know, they go to the movies 3 times a year, they go to a show once a year, and it's probably likely to be Hamilton or the Eagles or Powderfinger's Reformation tour than it is to be going to see the Butterfly Effect, a band that they were into when they were 16-year-old emos, you know.
Yeah, well, and that could very well be it, man, you know, and like, it'll actually just be interesting to see on top of that, if this whole COVID period has changed people's priorities and perspectives on things. It could work, because once something's taken away from you for so long, sometimes you don't realize, you know, you take things for granted now. And maybe once music comes back, people will be like, holy shit, like I'm never taking that for granted. I'm going to see as many bands as I can. That would be awesome. But
well, they're like, you know what? I could live without this. I've done pretty good with the last 9 months of not having any music. So I think maybe
I could say, but totally, dude. Yeah, you know what? That's, who knows, man. And that's, I guess we'll learn on the run with that one. But yeah, man, I think, I don't know. And that's just how we've approached our kind of music. And we're going to kind of continue to do that, because like you're saying, with just writing stuff that makes you happy, we do exactly the same thing, because I think that's important with longevity as well, because I love playing in a band and I'll never say it's bad, and I'm extremely lucky to be able to do that. But the reality is, like, there's 70% of it that sucks fucking dicks, man, like being at airports and all that shit. Like, it's not a fun part of it. So if you're then also getting up on stage and being like, this is average at best, what I'm doing now, you're not going to last. In my opinion, you won't last.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I think that's super important to do it when you get up there. You're just like, I don't even give a shit if anyone's out there. This is amazing. Then, you know, to a certain extent, but like, just as long as you're happy. Yeah. So the stuff that we write that makes us happy, we've already been told, like, that's not going to get radio play. That's not going to do this. So we're like, okay, well, we'll just keep playing live, you know, and just see what happens from there. So.
Well, you can't ever try and create something for radio, because it just ends up sucking. So it's just so hard to, you know, just so hard to know what to do, because I find it's still interesting for me though, because I feel like I'm more of an entertainer necessarily than a songwriter per se. And sometimes I feel like without an audience to appreciate what I'm doing, sometimes I don't get enjoyment out of playing like some of the songs, some of my acoustic songs, to know people. But it's just like, there's no one here, just play your songs. And I'm like, no, but they need to be, there's a connection there, and they need to have someone needs to hear them and understand the message in the songs and that sort of stuff. And it needs to be like a give and take thing. Yeah. That if we don't have 100%. That, you know, I just go, well, you know,
no, I
tree falls in the woods.
Yeah, totally. I think I will have to edit what I just said before then. Like, I do agree, actually, like, to say what I said, like, I think you need to do what you enjoy. Yeah. But at the same time, yes, like, I think it is important to have people there, because then you just like, because if you didn't have people there and you got that exact same enjoyment, then just jam, because it's heaps cheaper.
Oh, totally.
Just rehearse in a room for an hour and you'll save heaps of money and get that same enjoyment. Don't put yourself through the ringer of touring and having the kick in the nuts being like, oh, cool, 6 people are here and 3 of them are my family.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
So I do agree with you there. Like, yeah, you got to have the energy, because I'm the same. Like, I consider myself more of an entertainer than a musician per se.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I had this vision of like the ultimate punk act would be to create your prog masterpiece. It's sitting on your hard drive. You've just spent like 6 weeks creating like the work of your life, and you listen to it and you go, this is perfect. And then you get it, you just drop a match on it and watch it burn, and you go, I am so punk. I'm the punkest I've ever been. I created this music for one person, and then you can just walk around for the rest of your life telling everyone how great it was. Oh, you should have heard this prog masterpiece. It was amazing. But I didn't.
Turns out I'm so punk.
Yeah, I didn't create it for anyone else but me. And once it was perfect. There's I don't even remember that. It's a pretty old school movie, a Richard Pryor movie called Brewster's Millions, and the whole thing features.
I haven't seen that.
The movie features a bet where if he can spend $30 million in 30 days and have nothing to show for it at the end of it, he inherits $300 million, or he can take $1 million and walk away. And so he decides to do
the 30 mil.
To get to the 30 mil. And one of the things is that he employs like an interior designer to design a room that he could die in. He says, I want to see it. And so to waste all this money, he'd walk into the room and he'd say, no, this sucks, do it again. And so the interior designer would come in and redo it. And then periodically through the movie, he walks into this room. And at the end of the movie, he goes, I could die in this room. And they go, cool, take it all down. It's all done. Like, and I always appreciated the nihilistic, the artistic sort of side of that.
Yeah, right. What's the movie called?
It's called Brewster's Millions.
Brewster's Millions.
Yeah.
That would actually, most people would be like, that would be so easy to do that. But I think that would actually be super hard to spend 30 mil, 30 days and have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, exactly. He throws big parties and he hires security and, does all these things, he's spending on wages, that sort of thing. I'm sure if he had a clear plan, but he was just kind of like, all right, cool, I'm going to.
I was going to say, you'd have to have okay, I got to think about this.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. I
have to rewatch that. I have to rewatch that. All right, a couple of quick fiery ones to just to finish up. Any books, podcasts, or YouTube channels that you watch or consume regularly that will that either musically or just in general? And this relates to another question that I wanted to ask about, like other things that you do outside of music to keep yourself mentally well and on track and
Yep. I do read a lot and I do listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yep.
So with podcasts, my probably like high rotation ones would be The Old Man and the Three, or the JJ Redick podcast.
Oh yeah, JJ Redick.
It used to be called JJ Redick podcast, but he's changed it to The Old Man and the Three.
Yep.
So I love that. I'm always like up to date with that because he's got always like all the NBA players. So and at the end of every episode, he does a draft with them.
Okay.
So, and the draft might be like your top because there's 3. There's him, Ben Alter's the other presenter, and whoever's on the show. So there's the 3 of them, and they do a draft, and the topic might be your favorite horror movie, or your favorite place to eat, or your best snack when watching a football game, or something like that. And they do a draft of it, and that's always pretty interesting to hear that. I think you would dig it actually, because you're obviously into the NBA. So it's got some great stuff on there.
Yeah, I've listened to a couple of his when he was doing it on the just by himself when he
JJ
first started up.
Yeah. So that was pretty good. So listen to that. Probably like a lot of people, I do listen to a bit of Joe Rogan, depending on who he's got on the show. Yeah. Him and Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, Tim Ferriss is great.
Yeah, and they cross over a little bit with who they see, but they both have very different approaches to the podcast, which I both really like. And the other one I listen to quite often is One Chance, One Life, which is the singer from H2O, the punk band H2O.
Yeah.
And he just interviews people in his house, but he's had people on like Chino from Deftones and just like different people. So like that's kind of my music fix one. And then
cool.
I got the sports one. So yeah, I do listen to a lot of podcasts because I'm similar to you. Like I kind of took note when you were saying when you're driving home after doing a lot of gigs, you're just like, I'm not listening to music. I'm exactly the same, man. If like after playing shows, I just don't want to listen to music. I like podcasts are just so much more soothing and just like, okay, cool, I can do this. So yeah. Yeah.
And so any other like any other kind of outside of music behaviors that you do regularly that help keep you on track?
So my main thing would probably have to be fitness.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So I work as well, which takes up time, but my biggest thing would be staying on top of my fitness and nutrition pretty much. I do put a lot of effort and time into that. Yeah. And so
what sort of style you're doing? Like a mixed routine, like you're lifting, or you're doing like cardio, you're doing hit stuff?
Yeah, mainly, which is really lucky because I've always had kind of a setup at home, and over the years I've kind of added to my home gym, and I've finally pretty much got everything that I want there now, which I luckily got before COVID hit. So particularly during that COVID time, my gym routine didn't change at all. If anything, I probably just did more. So
more time on your hands.
But it's definitely a mix. That's it, man. But it's definitely a mixture of, I mean, over the years, my goals have changed with my body, I guess. And I'm not saying I'm not old by any means, but I'm also not 20 anymore. So like, being 20, that mentality of just trying to be the biggest fucker in the room has definitely left my mind a long time ago. And my focus now is just practical and health related, and just, even as ridiculous as it sounds, but just aesthetic looking. I don't give a shit what people think. Like, I just want to look fit. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be honest, like, a lot of people are like, oh, that's so whatever. But I'm like, like anyone that kind of doesn't admit that they want to look fit, I think might be a little bit lying to themselves, maybe.
I think so.
But I think so too, because if you just had the chance to just be like super shredded, you'd be like, yeah, I'll take that, you know? So, but, man, mainly like just a mixture of cardio and lifting, but no more heavy lifting anymore. It's more, more reps over weight, like heavy weights and just stuff like that. So that kind of takes up most of my time, man. Yeah,
that's pretty much us left for it. Yeah. I was thinking about, I've been tossing around this idea about wanting to start like a metal gym. And apparently there's a guy, the singer from Bleeding Through or somebody, he's the guitarist, I think, but there's a guy who's set one up like in Orange County.
Yeah, right. So what does that entail?
Basically the idea is it has a massive PA system. The walls are all black, and you blast metal, and you can have a whole bunch of different kinds of training, you know, whether it be lifting or whether it be hit or classes and stuff. I like classes personally. Plays really good tunes, but you also make it so there's like a 1 hour turnaround laundry service as well as healthy meals. So if you're on the road touring and you want to get a workout in, one of the hardest things, as you would know, is to try and find some time to train. And sometimes hotel gyms can be pretty shitty. If you had if all the tour managers of all the alternative bands knew that there was like this gym in Sydney that was near the airport that you could go and wash your clothes at, get meals at, go in and train, do a class, whatever. You'd have personal trainers available, and then you could just stop in and have like a refresh and walk out of there going, all right, cool, I've like taken care of my shit for the day. So
that's a sick idea.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
My regular trainer has hair down to here and like wears cowboy boots and leather jacket stuff. He's like, dude, you need to give me some tips for like rock and roll fashion. I'm like, Steve, I don't need to give you any tips, buddy. You maybe need to give me a few tips.
Nailing it. Yeah, you're nailing it, Steve.
It's so great to have Steve, like a shout out. Yeah, Steve Gomez.
Shout out, Steve.
Well, to put you on the spot, and this will be my final question.
Bulls on Parade by Rage Against the Machine.
Oh, you got it. All right, cool.
Ask the question anyway.
Oh, what's your favorite? What is your favorite riff, Brenton Page?
Yeah, I thought about this because I knew this would be coming up, and I was like thinking, this is a long process for me, G. Like, I thought about this for a long time because there's a lot of like super complex riffs. I'm like, that is awesome. But then it just came, and Bulls on Parade kept saying, yeah, but it's just such a simple riff. And at the end of it, that was actually what made me go, like, that's it. It gives you that feel, and it is so simple, and it has
Yep.
so much an effect for being simple that has to probably be the one for
Yeah.
me.
Well, that's I've
Yeah,
used that.
so-
That's been one of the ones I've done. I did a little theme song for the podcast, and the theme song is Bulls on Parade, Back in Black, and Black Dog by Led Zeppelin. They all happen to be at like 86 BPM, which is perfect.
Awesome.
It actually turns out that there's 3 sort of famous riffs that are based on octaves, actually, as it turns out. Bulls on Parade being one of them. The other one is the Immigrant Song, which is Lucius
Led
Borach's
Zeppelin?
favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, of course, there's also which you probably wouldn't think of as
There we
traditionally
go.
My Sharona as traditionally as a riff, but it's pretty iconic. So
As soon as you do it, you know what it is.
Yeah,
and that
exactly.
was part of like, it's just a banger, man. We
Yeah,
can't
it
really
is.
go wrong.
It
I
is so
think
good.
Rage have a lot of bangers. So yeah.
Great.
So
Well, thank you, Brenton Page, for being on Riffing with G. It's been great to talk to you, mate.
no, thanks for having me, dude. I
No
love
worries.
it.
Cool.
All
Take
right,
it
man.
easy. I'll chat to
Enjoy
you
your
soon.
night.
Okay, bye.
Sweet.